The Radio Forest Podcast.
Dan, what's happening, man?
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I wanted to start things off and ask you, hey, what's the first band you ever met?
The first band I met when I was a kid, probably with the entire band, probably Queensryche, I think.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, they were doing a record store signing here. There's a big vinyl shop, old school shop that's around here in the Chicagoland area. And that's probably where actually went, the whole band was there. I was a big Queensryche fan growing up. But as far as meeting the whole band, they were probably the first ones.
Did you get there early and wait in line and get something
Yeah.
signed? I mean, just like
Oh
that?
yeah. Oh yeah. I stood in line and waited my turn and came through. And this was probably around the Operation Mindcrime days for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jeff Tate's doing he's touring that album right now. He's in
Yeah.
I just talked to him yesterday. He's in like Germany right now and then heading back to the States.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, like John, our bass player, played with Jeff Tate on some of Jeff's solo stuff for a little bit, a few years back. And then Jeff actually came up on stage with us with Disturb one time to sing one of our songs like years ago. So like, it's kind of funny how it came full circle. I never told him that. I don't know him as well as John knows him, but
Yeah.
I never told him that I actually stood in line to meet him at the record store here in Chicago. But
Well, I wanted to ask you that because you're the first band that I met. I got my first radio job in 2000,
oh,
and I was
awesome.
like the part-time guy, and I had to set up for an in-store signing at a mall you guys did. It was a record store, and
Yeah.
you guys were super nice. I always appreciated it. And you were opening up
Where was
for
the
the
store
Stone
at?
Temple. What's that?
Where was the store at? What
That was
place?
in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Might have been called the Gallery of Sound, I think. And I
Okay.
think they're still there. It's
Yeah, nice.
not in the mall though.
And you were going to say this was during the Stone Temple Pilots tour?
Yeah, and I got to go back and meet STP too.
Mhm.
And I remember Scott being super weird at the time. This is
Mhm.
my first rock band, so I didn't know what to expect. He had like a shawl over his head,
Uh-huh.
didn't really look up at all, wore sunglasses, real quiet.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was him kind of like whacked out or
No,
leaning into the persona. What was your memory of that tour?
well, the memory was great because they were the first band to actually pay us. So up to that point, we never got paid. We had to
Yeah.
pay to pay. But this was shortly after we did Ozzfest 2000. So once we broke through after Ozzfest, that really, the album took off. It really put us on the map. And then Stone Temple Pilots asked us, to be support act on that fall tour. And it literally was our first paycheck. So we weren't always drawing money from the label anymore because we were so deep in the hole financially with them up to that point. But the band was amazing. They were great. And from my memory of it though, Scott was clean at the moment. I know he had his ups and downs, throughout his whole life with it. And at that moment, there wasn't a whole lot of interaction between us and him throughout the day, probably because he was, trying to stay on the straight and narrow, and he was doing really well, and he was killing it, vocally up there performing every night, and the band was very gracious and accommodating to us, and it was a great experience to be on be support act for them to see a band up there to killing it night after night with so many hits that they had and watch, Scott was quite the performer, very animated and flamboyant up there and just vocally just killing it. And a few times throughout the tour, he pulled David up on stage to sing the song "Dead and Bloated" with him, which was really cool moment. So it was a surreal moment. We were all like, felt like little kids, like they're like, "Oh my God, we're on this tour with this huge band, and now he's pulling David up to sing a song with them," and so it was very cool.
I just saw a video that showed behind the scenes of them recording that album. And for Dead and Bloated, he's screaming that into the guitar pickup. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's what made the album, but do you think
yeah.
that would work?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm sure it did. I've seen that video of it before too. Yeah, sometimes, the pickup can, you can pick up your voice if you're talking into it or singing into it. And
That's awesome.
yeah, that's cool.
So this is the 25th anniversary of The Sickness, which was that tour. And that year was big for rock. It was Chocolate Starfish, Limp Bizkit, Deftones, White Pony, Gift from Taproot, Papa Roach, Infest. And to
Mhm.
realize that you guys also broke through, I mean, did it seem like a giant footprint for rock at the time? And you're like, man, what are we going to do? We're in the middle of this stream.
Yeah, it was such an amazing time because, yeah, you mentioned so many great bands and there was so much talent out there and everybody just, kicking the door open to this genre and whatever I know the label of new metal and all this stuff to come out at the time. And Ozzfest being a big stepping stone for most of us out there too. It was such a great opportunity and it really pushed us, I mean, I could speak in for ourselves. It really pushed us to bring our A game. We're sharing the stage with so many awesome, talented bands, and everybody's trying to do their thing to stand out. So if anything, it really took us this small Chicago garage band to a stage and to an audience like that on a daily basis, and really made us, you know, learn quick. You had to step up. There was our opportunity, and we took it.
And now you talked about your bassist before. I think I got to see him one time in a real small club with the Union Underground, and it just blew me away. But
Mhm.
with the 25th anniversary and going back through some of this stuff, have you guys talked to Fuzz? How has that relationship been over the years, or you just kind of don't know?
Yeah, I talked to him. I actually still hang out with him now and then. So we kind of reconnected over the years. When the time came, it was very difficult. It was late 2003 when we asked him, to step down, to leave the band, and it just wasn't. It was difficult time for us on the road, and you know, so for many years passed, and the friendship fell apart at the moment. And I still reached out to him over the years. And it wasn't until, we got a little bit older and we wised up, and me and him we were best friends, we were brothers. And so it was a difficult time for us outside of the band, just on a personal level. But unfortunately, sometimes it takes a death in the family or something like that, or friendships to pull people together. And his father passed away years ago, and I called him up and asked him if it was okay if I attended it. I didn't want to interfere or just make anything awkward for the family. And I kind of reconnected then. And then as our kids got older, his daughter's the same age as my daughter, his son's the same age as my son. We became dads and we got older, and we kind of realized we're losing a lot of time together. And we reconnected as friends, and I still hang out with them every now and then, more so recently because my father passed away in September this past year. And I had him come out. He was a pallbearer for my dad after all these years because so even though we lost a lot of time in between there, he's still, an important person in my life. And it's good that we kind of, it's sad that it took our fathers to pass away, but in a weird sense, it kind of brought us back together because of it.
What do you think your dad would have thought about that? Because it sounds like you guys have known each other a real long time. So clearly your parents know who he is, knows his kids, knows him, where he lives. So what do you think your dad would have thought about him being
Yeah.
a pallbearer?
I think he would have been very happy to know um, that in a weird way that his death brought me and Fuzz back together. And even though he hasn't seen Fuzz in all those years too, he always liked him. He had a connection with him too, and they were both similar people, and they're both very hard-headed and blunt and you know a bit ignorant at times. My dad and Fuzz, they're just very forward on it. But he would have liked to have known that we're back together and we're on a friendly level, that we're hanging out again and that. So you got two, like I said, we're like brothers. So it brought us back together. That brotherhood's back.
Yeah, I just realized that really means a lot because if you ask someone to be in your wedding, weddings, marriages come and go, or
Yeah.
you'll see a picture like, I don't talk to that person anymore. It's not a big deal, but a pallbearer, that's
Yeah.
pretty emotional, and it's gotta match you and plus the person that's passed.
It was, and I know it caught him off guard when I called him up to ask him if he would consider doing it, and I just know how important it would have been, and my dad would have liked to have known that he did it, like I said, because it did bring us together. So I was hesitant at first because there was so much time that had passed, but I also knew how important it was, and because my dad knew that we were like brothers, I thought it was the right thing to do.
Has Disturbed ever heard back from anybody you covered? Have you ever gotten any feedback or acknowledgement or kudos?
Yeah, we did when we did Shout off the first album, Shout 2000 from Tears for Fears. Ironically, when we before we got the record deal, we were doing it in the studio as on a demo as a local band, and we went out to dinner that night, and ironically, Kurt Smith from Tears for Fears happened to be in town and sitting at the table next to us, and it was so bizarre. And I'm thinking, like, this is a sign. I got so superstitious from that point forward. I'm like, what are the odds that this guy, from England is over here in a seat next in the table next to us? We invited him back to the we told him we're this band called Disturbed, local band here in Chicago, and we're recording one of your songs. And would you have any interest in hearing it? And he said yes. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, who would really do that? You
Yeah.
think I'm going to follow some local band to their studio in the middle of the night? And he did, and we played the demo for him, and he was really excited about it. And he said, wow, you guys really brought out the angst in the lyrics and the message that was, meant to come across that way. So he paid us a nice compliment. And we fast forward to a couple months later, we ended up getting a record deal. And then he came out to have dinner with us and some of the people from Warner Brothers at the time when we were out in California. And that's the last interaction that I've had with him. But it was cool to know that we got his blessing. And then, fast forward to The Sound of Silence. And I think Paul Simon had emailed our management, to send a message to us because he's seen our performance when we did Sound of Silence on Conan O'Brien's show. And I don't think he knew about it up until that point, but he happened to be fumbling through the channels and stopped on Conan and seen our version of it and gave us, his blessing as well too, which is always a stressful time because I don't really care what anybody else thinks of what we do.
Yeah, Paul Simon likes it.
But if I care about it, I care about what my band members think when we write our songs. Outside of that, I don't care. But if we're going to kind of cover somebody's music, I do care about the original songwriter. And it's good to know that we got his blessing because the last thing you want is him to be calling or reaching out to us saying, what the hell did you do to my song? You destroyed it, So, and I'm sure he's not complaining now because that song has done so much
Yeah,
over
probably
the
bought a
years.
house.
I'm sure he's got
Yeah.
some nice royalty checks from it. Not that he needs it, but we've had over 1 billion views on YouTube with it. It keeps on finding new life somehow, virally or dance remixes or the Olympics and all these things that they've used it for. It's a song. It's a gift that keeps on giving, I guess.
Tell me about this new song, I Will Not Break. Right away, I thought of The Sickness. It sounded like, I
Mhm.
think you don't get enough credit as a riff master. And I think that's, for me, what sets Disturbed's albums apart is the amount of riffs that you have squeezed into a song, let alone an album. And this
Yeah.
reminded me of like, it's old school Dan riffs. Is that
Yeah.
inspired by that album in that era?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Because at the time, when we're planning for this 25th anniversary, I'm a bit of a hoarder when it comes to the Disturbed memorabilia, and I'm the guy that saved a lot of the stuff over the years. And I was going through boxes of Disturbed memorabilia, and I came across some old demo tapes and cassette tapes, and that had some old riffs and just improvised moments at practice. So it had me in that headspace of like, even though I Will Not Break is a new riff, it just kind of had me in that headspace of what things were like back then. And I wanted to give David something musically that would hopefully trigger him to give a little bit of that old school David too. And so when I kind of pieced together these ideas and gave it to him, we got still that melodic side of David, but some of that fast, rapid fire syncopation at times with him as well. So we just thought it came together great and it would be a good lead off track for the fans to hear the new material.
Well, I love that you guys are still writing music. It sounds fantastic. And good luck on the tour, 25th anniversary of The Sickness. I know you've got Daughtry and 3 Days Grace and Seven Deaths on some dates. So good luck in your tour this year, man. I really like that new song.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
All right, brother. Take care.